your reality, then there is God's reality. And the choice is, which reality are you going to live in? Are you going to live in your reality? Or are you going to choose to live in God's reality? My mind is very quickly slipping and shifting to prophet Elisha. And what occurred was there was the king of Syria who was about to come against the nation of Israel. And every time the king was set out to come against the nation of Israel, the people of Israel already know what the king's plans were. And so the king wanted to know, how in the world does Israel know what I'm going to do before I do it? And he came and he pulled in all his so-called prophets, and they told him, well, there's this prophet down in Israel. And this prophet down in Israel is seeing and hearing what the king is saying in his bedchamber. So before the king can say what he wants to say, the prophet in Israel already knows about it. King said, I know what I got to do. I got to take the prophet out. He doesn't realize that the prophet is source is God. And I'm going to deal with those issues about source, about what your source is. He didn't realize that it wasn't the prophet that was doing it, but it was the God that was in the prophet that was doing it. So you can take out the prophet, but you can't take out the God. But in this case, he says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to send the entire Syrian army. And this thing just blows my mind. This guy sends an entire army after one man. After one man, not special forces, no. He sends the whole army after one man. He gets to Elisha, and when he gets down there, Elisha has a servant who's working with him and who's working for him. And that servant is there. And when he gets there, the servant gets out and says, alas, my master, what shall we do? Because when he looked out, he saw the entire Syrian army surrounding his camp. Got it? So what was his reality? Talk back to me. It was the Syrian army. That was his reality. That was what he saw. That's what he understood. It was the Syrian army. He saw the army. And was the army real? Yes. Stay with me. What he saw was real. What his threat was real. His fear was real. The threat to his life was real. What he was feeling was real. That's what I'm trying to tell you. That what you experience is real. There's no question about that. It is very, 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 very real. And so he goes to Elisha and he says, alas, my master. He said, look, the entire Syrian army has surrounded our camp, and it's just me and you. He said, what in the world are we going to do? And this is one of my favorite texts in the Bible, because Elisha says to him, he says to God, he says, God, open his eyes that he might see. And then he tells him, he says, they that are with us, or they that are for us, are more than they that are against us. And the Bible says that when the young man, I hope you can hear what I'm saying, that when he opened his eyes, that he saw the angels of God surrounded the army of his enemy, and he realized that there was another reality outside of his reality. There was something else going on beyond what he was experiencing. And I'm trying to tell you today that I don't care what you are experiencing now, there's a spiritual reality that's taking place outside of whatever you are experiencing that ought to give you joy and give you hope and know that you're coming through whatever you're going through. Father, open their eyes that they might see. All you see is your bank account. All you see is your eviction notice. All you see is the fact you don't have a job. All you feel is the fact that your relationship is all jacked up. All you see is the fact that you won't get married. You see that. But God is here to have me here to tell you today there's something else going on outside of that.